Welcome to Snoozecast, the podcast designed to help you fall asleep. On Snoozecast, we read excerpts from public domain works and occasionally original stories. New episodes come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'd like to thank our listeners. If you enjoy our show, please follow us on social media, write us a review, and also share it with a friend. The best place to listen to us is on our website, snoozecast.com. That way, you can play a single episode and fall asleep without another one automatically playing. This episode is supported by fresh cut flowers on the countertop. Tonight, I'll be reading the opening to the 1903 instructional nonfiction book, The Flower Garden, by Ida Dandridge Bennett. This American author published many works on gardening both in book and periodical format, and also invented and patented a removable window shelf for a window garden the same year as this book was published. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. Chapter 1. The location and arrangement of the garden. A south slope is the ideal situation for a garden, since it ensures good drainage and the greatest amount of sunlight. The garden should also be open to the east and west, if possible, that it may have the benefit of the morning and evening sun. Shelter on the north is desirable, as north winds are disastrous to roses and tender perennials. Partial shelter on the west should be given in localities where the prevailing winds of winter are from that quarter. The south side of a building, or even of a high fence, with trees and tall shrubs at a little distance to the west is best, though any site that receives abundant sunshine through the morning and early afternoon may be made satisfactory by planting trees and shrubs on the north and west. The garden should always be at the rear or side of the dwelling, never in front or along the street. The reasons for this are obvious. The garden proper is intended to furnish cut flowers, to provide a place of experiment with new varieties, and to grow hardy perennials which have certain seasons of bloom and cannot be depended upon at all times for ornamental effect. One should feel free to work there unobserved of the passer-by, and this is impossible in a garden close to the street. Again, while the permanent garden is beautiful in itself, it is not suitable for the lawn and greatly mars the effect on the grounds. Beds of ornamental foliage plants, cannas, ricinus, coleus, and the like, appropriately placed, add much to the beauty of a well-kept lawn, but should be carefully considered in relation to its size and the trees and shrubbery already there. On a small city lawn, not more than one such bed should be allowed. On a large lawn, 3 will give a better effect than a great number, especially if care is taken to have them all visible from different points on the lawn and from the house, never isolating them by so placing that clumps of trees or shrubbery intervene, but using these rather as a background for the beds. It is from the hammock that the amateur gardener will most enjoy the results of her labor. It is there she will find leisure to watch the growth of plants, to compare the effect of different varieties, to note where she may improve the vista by a different arrangement next year, to observe the effects of locality, of the afternoon and morning sun, and all the peculiarities of plant growth that escape her when busy with trowel and watering pot, so that the view from it should be first consideration. A very good arrangement is to put a large bed of ricinus on the most remote spot of the lawn, 4 plants in the center of a 12-foot bed, surrounded with a row of salvia splendens edged with little gem sweet alyssum. Nearer, an 8-foot bed of the large flowered cannas may be introduced and edged with coleus or the second size of caladiums, while a 6-foot bed of ornamental grasses, Arundodonax, Erianthus ravine, Eulalia gracillima univitata, will make a satisfactory third. Such beds are rich in tropical effects and give more distinction to a lawn than any other class of plants. Where there is ample water supply, these beds may be elevated a few inches above the lawn to make them more conspicuous. But where the seasons are hot and dry and water must be carried, it is better to set them slightly lower than the lawn, so that all the available moisture may be utilized. A few inches of margin must be allowed around the edges of beds on the lawn, so that the mower may run close to the beds without injuring the plants, though even then it will be best to use the lawn shears. Such beds call for carefully trimmed lawns. Unless the grass can be properly cared for, it is better to exclude flowers from this part of the grounds entirely, as it is time thrown away to plant flowers which will presently be hidden by tall grass and weeds. A neglected lawn involves an amount of labor in the semi-annual cleaning of spring and fall out of all proportion to the results, while a lawn well cut and raked is more easily cared for with each recurring year, the grass growing clean and straight, and the rake and mower passing freely and easily through it. The scheme for a permanent garden must be decided by the size and shape of the plot of ground at command, an irregular plot sometimes lending itself to more graceful arrangement than a symmetrical one. The operation of laying out the beds will be the same, whatever the shape. Having decided the boundaries of the garden, it will be best to mark the outlines by a cord attached to pegs driven into the ground. The sod should then be removed from the entire area by cutting just below the crown of the grass. Desirable arrangements of beds are grown in accompanying illustrations. 2 1/2 or 3 feet should be allowed for walks. The beds may be placed to advantage by finding the center of the plot and driving there a stake to which a cord is loosely attached. Mark off on this cord half the diameter of the bed desired. For center of plot, 4, 5, or 6 feet. Fasten to the cord at this point a sharp stick and describe the circle on the ground. In this way, the garden walks may be outlined and the inner and outer circles of the round beds. The oval beds must be measured off and defined by stakes driven into the ground. The width of the beds should be not more than can be easily reached across for weeding and cultivating. Where the soil has not been previously cultivated, it must be spaded at least 2 feet deep and thoroughly pulverized. All roots and stones should be removed. If the soil is clayey or gravelly, it will be best to remove it entirely and to fill in with soil better adapted to the growth of flowers. Or the surface may be removed for several inches and laid aside. Then the poorer subsoil should be dug out and removed, and the surface soil replaced in the bottom of the bed with a liberal quantity of old, well-rotted manure. The bed should then be filled to its original level with leaf mold or muck. If all the original soil is to be retained, remove the topsoil for top dressing. Spade the manure into the subsoil and replace the surface soil. In ground which has not been cultivated, this surface soil is rich in humus or leaf mold, which furnishes food in its most available form for the young plant and should, therefore, be left where the plant can use it and not be turned under as is usually done. Nature never turns the soil upside down, nor will the wise gardener, except when a richer and better soil is to be added, or when it is necessary to work in manure. In making beds that have been worked before and need no enriching, excellent results may be secured by pushing a long spade into the ground the whole length of its blade and twisting it around. This breaks up and mellows the ground more effectively than turning it over, while it leaves the good soil on top where the young plant roots can get it. Later, when the plant grows sturdier and stretches out its roots in search of food, the manure-enriched earth in the bottom of the bed will attract and draw them down into its cool, moist depths, away from the heat and draft of the surface. But the young plants must have mellow, nourishing food from the start, or they will perish before they reach its storehouse provided for the mature plant. Never prepare a garden by turning under the sod. I am well aware that this, together with turning under the surface soil, will be the method of the average man who has had some experience of farming, but the flower grower cannot always follow farming methods with safety. After spading the beds, it will be well to enclose them with some such permanent material as brick, cement curbing, or narrow boards. 4-inch siding set in the ground an inch or more, and held in place on each side by pegs of wood. Old wagon spokes, which can usually be found at the blacksmiths, are excellent for this. Make the cheapest and most quickly constructed enclosure, and may be quite covered with such border plants as dusty miller or phlox subulata. The boards may be given a coat of dull green paint or shingle stain before being put in place. Ornamental grasses and foliage plants. The permanent garden beds should have some such protection, as it greatly lessens the work of caring for them. Sod borders are very attractive, but involve an amount of care altogether out of proportion to the effect, as they must be kept closely shaved, and the constantly encroaching roots of the plants must be as constantly curbed. This is also the case with grass walks, attractive to look at, but a supreme nuisance to the gardener. Walks of gravel, cinders, or coal ashes are preferable, and should be dug deep enough to smother out all weeds in the soil. If coal ashes are used, the paths should be nearly filled, the roughest part raked off, and the surface gone over with a heavy roller. If left unrolled, however, the surface will be found firm and hard after the first heavy rain. Very good and inexpensive walks are obtained in this manner. Walks, of whatever kind, should never be hoed, and the weeds must be removed from them by hand. Hardness and smoothness are the requisites of a good walk. It is well to avoid self-sowing flowers like sweet alyssum or petunias near the inside walks, as they come up by thousands in the spring and can only be removed by salting, scalding, or uprooting. The beds should be well above the surface of the walks, especially those containing hardy perennials like peonies and lilies. In the case of most plants, water standing around their roots in winter is absolutely fatal. The location of the beds and their consequent moisture and sunshine must determine the flowers to occupy them. If you are fortunate enough to have a corner low, damp, and shaded in the afternoon, that is the place to set out the beautiful Japanese iris and other moisture-loving plants, while the gladiolus may be given a prominent place in full sunshine. Asters and other flowers that do not bloom until fall should have a less conspicuous place. They are so showy that they will not fail to attract attention wherever they may be planted. Pansies and other low-growing plants should be set out in the bed next the lawn. The general effect is finer when only one kind of flower is grown in a bed, but when two or more varieties of flowers, harmonizing in color, are grown together, the tallest must be placed in the center and the others grouped according to height. Various plants may be used as edgings, due consideration being given to the plants which are to fill the beds. A mass of one kind and color is more effective than a mixed bed. The beginner will find that the percentage of success is greater in growing a large number of one kind, all requiring the same conditions of soil, moisture, and sunlight, than in trying to force plants of widely different habits to grow under the same conditions. Hearty perennials, however, not many of which deserve an entire bed, do very well with several varieties in the same long bed or border, and may be so grouped as to give a succession of bloom throughout the season. A raised bed of peonies interspersed with the new large blooming phlox and bordered with Japan lilies will give a succession of flowers from May to October. Or a long bed of hollyhocks, or hibiscus with a row of large flowered phlox in front and edged with dwarf phlox will give months of lovely bloom. This last combination also makes a serviceable screen between the vegetable garden and the lawn, or to hide a rear fence. In arranging party-colored beds of flowers, due attention must be paid to the harmonizing of tints. Do not combine magenta and scarlet, or purple and blue. Separate them by the interposition of white, the most valuable color in the garden, as it not only harmonizes all colors, but wonderfully enhances their brilliancy. White with scarlet, with blue, or with yellow is always good. Lavender and heliotrope are lovely with nearly all shades of scarlet, rose, and pink. Blue flowers planted in the rear of the garden increase its apparent size, while white, bright yellow, and scarlet, by bringing the background nearer, decrease it. Monkshood and the tall blue larkspur are excellent for rear beds. In planting a shrubbery, it is neither necessary nor desirable to use boards or other curbing for the beds, but the turf should be kept neatly trimmed and cut. A plot 60 by 40 feet or more, enclosing a considerable area of turf, gives room for rustic seats, a stationary hammock, and a tree or two. The circle in the border greatly increases the accommodation for plants and furnishes an ideal spot for lilies. The lily pond in the center will be discussed at length in the chapter devoted to aquatic plants. Chapter 2. Soils. In every garden, the matter of soil is of first importance. In case of an outdoor garden, the existing conditions will largely determine the class of plants to be grown. A good loam, that is a non-coherent mixture of clay and sand, with a proportion of such decayed vegetable matter as leaves and the fibrous roots of grasses, is the best garden soil, being what is termed warm and early. Soil containing a good proportion of sand is warm, while a preponderance of clay makes what is known as cold or wet soil. If there is good drainage, cold soil can be rendered lighter, sandier, and more friable by the liberal application of manure, which in 2 or 3 years will quite change its character. But this is a long time to wait, and to get quick results it will be necessary, after laying out the garden and outlining the beds, to remove the earth to a depth of 20 inches or more, filling in with soil suitable for the class of plants to be grown in each bed. In the beds intended for roses, however, the clay may be left, as roses require this soil. Where it is not present, it should be supplied and added to each year, as the heavy manuring which roses require constantly reduces the relative proportion of clay. For the pansy bed, nothing better than leaf mold from the woods can be procured. For this bed, remove 6 or 8 inches of earth. Spade in a good supply of old, well-rotted manure from the cow stable. Top dress with several inches of leaf mold. You will have a bed that will give magnificent pansies and a few weeds. For the salvia, canna, ricinus, caladium, and other strong-growing plants, no soil is better than the muck or peat of swamps, soil composed of partly carbonized vegetable matter, decomposed by the action of water. Leaf mold consists of vegetable matter which has decayed without being submerged, and it usually contains a liberal quantity of sharp white sand, to which it owes its friable, non-adhesive character.